Again, feel free to share with us where you're joining us from. All right, so let's go ahead and kick off the agenda. I would like to note that joining us, as I mentioned earlier, are three members of the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. First is Sarah Kanikio, who is the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. Then Thaddeus Pulowski, who's the Director for the Center of Resilient um, uh, Cities and Landscapes, and an adjunct professor here at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, or GSAPP. And then finally, Noah Chasen, who is the Assistant Director of the MS in Architecture and Urban Design program at GSAPP, and also an adjunct associate professor of architecture. So thank you so much for joining us. They are going to be, first, we're going to talk a little bit more about the climate school, and then they will definitely be sharing more details on the phenomenal GSAPP program. In terms of the agenda, we're going to touch on the student profiles of our learning communities. We'll dive into a little bit more on the dual degree curriculum. We'll also touch on professional development opportunities within both schools, along with financial aid, and of course, the application process, my personal favorite. So, again, just anchoring everybody, today we are talking about the dual degree between the MS in Climate program and the MS in Architecture and Urban Design program. What's really phenomenal about this opportunity is our MS in Climate is traditionally a 2-year degree program. With our partnership with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation, this dual degree is going to allow you in the same 2 years to complete two distinct degrees. Um, that's again joining two learning communities, alumni networks, again, of course, two distinct credentials in the same amount of time it would take you to complete our traditional 2-year MS in Climate program. It would be a 78 credit hour academic journey for you, completed over 5 semesters. And of the 78 credit hours, 33 of those credits are going to come from Columbia Climate School's MS in Climate program, and 45 of the credits are going to be derived from the MS in Architecture and Urban Design program. And this program combines climate science, adaptation strategies, and innovative design skills to address climate change through resilient, adaptive urban environments. This is to provide you a very brief snapshot of what the structure could potentially look like. It is going to be, again, you could potentially pursue the program where your first year is with the MS in Climate program, and then your second year is going to be in the MS in Architecture and Urban Design program. So you would begin with us in the fall and spring, and then transition to the MS in Architecture and Urban Design beginning in the summer. It's always very important to note that the degree program at GSAPP always begins in the summer. You would continue into the fall and conclude in the spring semester. Alternatively, you could pursue the program in the reverse, where you begin your graduate journey with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. So you would start in the summer, continue in the fall and spring in the MS in Architecture and Urban Design, and then transition for your final 2 semesters in the MS in Climate program. That would be again concluding with fall and then a spring. One thing that's very important to note about this degree program is that you are in residence in a single program in a single academic year. So this dual degree, you will not be mixing architecture and urban design program required courses with MS in climate program required courses. You will be either starting with the climate school and pursuing the MS in climate program courses, or alternatively starting with the MS in architecture and urban design and pursuing those courses full time. So that's the nature and structure of the program. Now I'd like to give a little bit more background to Columbia Climate School itself. One thing I like to note is we have a very interesting footprint. But first, let me go a little bit further back in time and highlight the fact that, of course, you're joining a session that is embedded within Columbia University. The university itself is the fifth oldest institution in the United States, or university in the United States. It's considered by many to be a blueprint for major research universities. And when you refer to the name Columbia University, you're referring to an institution with over 20 different schools that fall underneath that umbrella. And the majority of those schools are graduate professional schools. Many of them are very well known and esteemed. You can think of, well, first and foremost, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation, of course, being one of those schools. Other schools could include the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences or Columbia Business School. The newest school launched, formally announced in 2020 and launched in 2021, is the Climate School. And our ethos is that the world requires knowledgeable leaders to work with businesses, communities, governments, and civil society to address the climate crisis. Columbia Climate School's graduate degree programs and other learning opportunities provide an interdisciplinary knowledge base for climate leaders with diverse interests and backgrounds. And we can't lean into that word interdisciplinary enough. The fact that climate touches everything. And you will see that interdisciplinary theme in the faculty that we hire, or the programs with which we offer, the courses with which we offer, the dual degree partnerships that we have launched. Interdisciplinary is in full view when we're talking about this MS in climate and MS in architecture and urban design. But interdisciplinary also refers to our student learning community in terms of their education backgrounds and interests in the climate space. There really is no cookie cutter Columbia Climate School student. And then the other element I want to note in terms of our footprint is Columbia Climate School does not have a single standalone building. We're unique in that regard, in that we host the majority of our courses in that middle photograph, which is the Morningside Heights campus, and that, in fact, that's where the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation is also housed. That middle photograph, and then on the right, you'll notice a building called the Forum. That building is on 125th and Broadway. That's where many of our faculty sit. And some of our climate core courses are taught in that building, which is the new Manhattanville campus. And then finally, you'll notice there is a photograph on the lower left-hand corner of a beautiful autumnal scene. In fact, we were just there on Friday for our graduate open house. That is the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. It's a 189-acre research campus in Rockland County. It's absolutely beautiful. We have a shuttle bus that goes up there every hour in front of Teachers College. And many of our climate scientists, Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences faculty have research labs there. In terms of Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, it just celebrated, in fact, its 75th anniversary within the university. And so whenever I reference Columbia Climate School being a new school, it's actually built on decades of research in earth, environmental science, and climate science in particular. In fact, in the 1970s, one of our Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory faculty was the first academic to coin the term global warming in a research paper. So we have decades of experience in the climate space, and we're thrilled now to have Columbia Climate School, where we are again growing a learning community of interdisciplinary, mission-driven students tackling climate change, pursuing opportunities within the space, and also partnering with fantastic professional schools like GSAPP. The MS in Climate program was actually launched this fall 2025. We welcomed our first cohort of learners. We had just over 50 students join us. In terms of the MS in Climate, about 53% entered directly from undergrad, while 47% entered having full-time work experience. And the work the students performed was actually very, diverse. We had students that worked in Bloomberg and Morgan Stanley in finance roles. We then had students at multilateral organizations like the United Nations. We also had students at the Environmental Protection Agency, the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, the United States Department of Agriculture. So a very diverse audience of students. The countries represented were 17. The average age is 26 years old. And I always like to highlight this chart of students, although I will say, full disclosure, it's not as impressive as GSAPP. You're about to see a very, a very global community, but we have students from Nepal to Taiwan, France to Bangladesh, Mexico to Liberia in the program. And then to give you a little bit more insights on this MS in climate now, this is a 50 credit hour, forgive me, for the dual degree, it would be 33 credit hour STEM designated professional degree that gives graduates from diverse backgrounds an in-depth training in specific areas of climate expertise and prepares them to be climate leaders at community, state, national, and international levels. While you're enrolled in this dual degree program, you will be exploring the Climate Core. This is a signature of a Columbia Climate School education. And the Climate Core courses include, I'll just run through them briefly, Dynamics of Climate Variability and Change. This is the physics behind climate change. I always like to note that when somebody stops you on the street and asks you, do you believe in climate change? And your response is yes. And then their next question is, why do you believe in it? This will anchor you in the why. And not only will it anchor you in the why, it'll teach you how to communicate it with different constituents. So whether you are speaking to an executive in the C-suite or an individual who is a climate policy analyst or a policy analyst in government or somebody in the K-12 space, you will be able to articulate the why behind climate change. Then we have you exploring the two pillars of addressing climate change. That would be climate change mitigation as well as climate change adaptation. I will say those are large lecture style courses, but they have individual discussion sections for more intimate learning. Then we have climate justice theory and practice, practice and policy, which is, of course, critical. The idea that climate change is impacting different communities. Certainly, the most under-resourced communities are the ones that see the gravest impacts. So, thinking through when working in the climate space with a climate justice lens is critical. That's taught by Sheila Foster here at Columbia Climate School. And then finally, quantitative methods for climate applications. I always like to stress that data is key in all of our lives. And if you are going to be a climate professional, understanding climate data, making decisions based off climate data and telling a story with climate data is very important. So that program is going to teach you specifically R and utilizing R to tell those climate stories. In that year you're with us, not only are you taking the climate core, of course, you will also be exploring climate school electives. And the climate school electives has only been growing in terms of their diversity. I like to note I started in March of 2022. In that academic year, there were literally 3 climate school electives offered. And now we have well over 20 electives that are available. And they range from climate mobility to water governance, food systems and climate interactions, to the history of the climate crisis. I also want to note that you are still able to cross-register at Columbia University. So if there were some electives, let's say at the School of International and Public Affairs, or for example, the School of Engineering and Applied Science that you wish to explore in your elective journey, that could also be possible. The one element is at least one of the electives has to be at Columbia Climate School. And now I'm going to go ahead and hand over the presentation to my colleague Sarah Canicchio, the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation.
Thank you, Alfred. Thank you all for joining this session. Again, my name is Sarah Canicchio, Director of Admission, and my role at GSAPP is really kind of to guide you through the application process and go over our requirements, and we'll do that in the later slides. But first, a little bit of history. Founded really in 1881, a long time ago, GSAPP is one of the first professional architecture programs established in the US. And since it's evolved, obviously, throughout the centuries and has since launched more programs related to the built environment. And so, in a sense, we call ourselves the home of the built environment within Columbia University. GSAPP currently offers a total of 8 master's programs in areas of urbanism, which we're going to talk a little bit more about one of the programs today, preservation, real estate development, and multiple architecture programs, obviously. It's a place of what Alfred mentioned earlier, a place of interdisciplinary engagement, research. Columbia University is a huge, research institution, encouraging discussion, action, and innovation to really impact the present day and future pressing issues as they relate to social and natural environments. And in the next slide, uh, uh, Alfred alluded to this a little bit earlier. We are a very diverse community. This is kind of a fun map to give you a sense of where GSAPP students are coming from. And again, students are not only geographically diverse, as Alfred mentioned at GSAPP, we are also um, collecting students from various backgrounds in academics and social backgrounds, and it all helps create a really rich dialogue and strengthens the community and the learning community. So we typically get applications from about 90 countries each year, and approximately 40 countries are represented in the incoming cohorts each year. And I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Thad to go over the curriculum and more stuff.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me okay? Good. Hey, I'm Thaddeus Pulaski. I'm the director of the Center for Resilient Cities and Landscapes, and I'm the lead faculty for this program. Well, our director, Kate Orff, is on sabbatical this year, and I've been teaching in the program for about 8 years, and am running this parallel research center with a mission to help frontline communities who are experiencing the effects of climate change today make long-term plans for adaptation. And we've been doing this work all over the world. And we try to integrate our work and practice with the research and um, teaching that goes on at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. So our urban design degree is not quite as old as Sarah told us that GSAPP is, but I think it's been around for about 50 years, as long as the profession of urban design as we know it. And it's centered in the studio. This is a little image of our studio. We have a very collaborative environment with people from all over the world, multiple different backgrounds. A lot of them are already have a bachelor's of architecture or landscape architecture, and that's historically been the pathway into an urban design career. I studied architecture, lots of the faculty studied architecture landscape. But more and more, we're getting people from different disciplines. And so it's becoming a really interdisciplinary, collaborative studio environment where we explore ideas that come from a range of geographies and disciplines. Next slide, please. Um, so um, that's Kate in Pune, India, on one of our many work trips with our students. And we, if all of you, I imagine, are here because you're interested in climate action on some level, and the design of cities, in as much as cities can be designed, is probably the most important avenue to influence policy. Most of the action in climate adaptation and mitigation is at the urban scale. I think that will be apparent in COP30 this year. And this is the scale at which we change the way that we uh, consume energy, the way that we use land, and the way that we build infrastructure and technology that supports our lives. So the kinds of future livelihoods and future ways of caring for the land are explored in depth in our studio culture at GSAPP. The next slide. Um, and so we engage in research, we engage in design, and we engage in action. And our students develop skills in each of these areas, particularly in action. We try to teach our students how to communicate and organize to make positive, effective change in the built environment. Next slide. So it's a 3 semester, very intense program. The summer semester is sort of like a boot camp where students, first of all, if a lot of them are new to New York, if you do the program with the climate piece up front, you'll already have spent a year in New York, but for a lot of our students, they're coming for their first time to New York. We have a lot of students from all over the world, as Sarah told you. And so there's a course that really helps the students get acquainted with New York's unique place in the world of urbanism as a great laboratory for policy experimentation and a great example in many cases of good things and bad things that have happened in the world of urban planning and design. And so there's a lot to learn from New York, but also we try to in the summer semester in the summer uh, teach the students about infrastructure systems and systems of governance in the built environment, and also how to think about transformation of urban environments at a district scale, like a neighborhood scale, which is often sort of the atomic unit for change. And they also, at the same time, take this representation class that introduces them to all the softwares that are necessary to make drawings like this, or we do a lot of video these days. So they learn After Effects and 3D modeling and more and more how to use these new AI tools to not make garbage, but make interesting, useful things. So we're just getting a handle on the AI revolution in software as well. So next slide, please. And then in the fall, we move from a neighborhood scale to a more district or to a more regional scale. And I'm teaching the fall studio right now on coastal transformation along the shores of Long Island and New Jersey. And last year, I taught the fall semester studio which focused on just transition in small Rust Belt communities. So the curriculum evolves really with the times and with the opportunities that we have for partnership in the world. Slide, please. Um, this spring semester goes from, so we go from the district to the regional to the global in the spring semester, and we build partnerships with different local actors on the ground, usually in the in an international setting and often in the global south. This is from our Jamaica studio, which has been on our minds. This was 2 years ago, of course, because Jamaica is just had this devastating hurricane, and we've been in touch with our friends and colleagues from the University of West Indies, who we partnered with 2 years ago, and with the Alligator Head Foundation, which is a local nonprofit. So we go to these places and we have community workshops and try to understand what are the issues on the ground for communities, and then propose together. We co-create long-term ideas about how a place can build with greater resilience. So that's the third semester. And then, okay, I'll hand it back to Sarah. Or should I
Awesome.
talk
Oh
about
yeah,
this?
no, it's me. Yeah, no, this
Okay.
this one's me. Thanks, that I
Okay. All
appreciate it.
right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So now we'll talk a little bit more. And thank you, Thad, for sharing. I love that sequence in the MS in Architecture and Urban Design program. How you keep scaling up, kind of the oversight. That's brilliant. So now let's talk about, a huge benefit of being in this dual degree program is access to phenomenal professional development opportunities embedded within both schools. And I'd really like to highlight the climate schools. Career management team and really the really dynamic opportunities that they're continually giving our students. So number one, yeah, we have a dedicated career management team. It's going to be growing to 4 staff members soon. And to give you a little bit of insights, right now we have a total of around 225 students at Columbia Climate School. So we have a really strong ratio of career management professionals to student population. In terms of the access, of course, they have employer information sessions that they host each and every week. Some of them are virtual, some of them are, on on campus, and then they also do some off-site visits. We also have resume and cover letter reviews. An alumni mentorship program happens each spring semester. You might be surprised to hear that given the newness of our school. How many alumni could you have necessarily? But one thing that we like to note is that our alumni mentorship program actually includes alumni of several partner programs within Columbia University in sustainability management and environmental science and policy. And we have had a program, the Climate Society program, that's existed for over 15 years at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So we actually have a really robust over 2,000 alumni that participate or that have access to participate in this alumni mentorship program. We also have a sustainability skills seminar series that we host every academic year. It seems to be growing every year. When I first started, there was 10. Now there's upwards of something like 18 sustainability skills seminars, and it ranged from lead certification to interest in sustainable consulting to interest in maybe climate finance and how to finance renewable energy projects. There are these like tight weekend seminar series to introduce you to a professional concept or a career avenue. Then we have the Sustainable Development Career Fair that attracts nearly 100 employers every fall semester, and about 1,000 students descend upon our university campus to speak to those professionals and organizations focused on climate, sustainable development, and the environment. They also have mock interviews and an exclusive job board site. In terms of employment sectors, this is for 2022 and 2023. And actually, if I could ask my colleague Damaris Diaz to go ahead and hyperlink in the chat box our career management website. There additional information is being provided, but we keep leaning into the word interdisciplinary in our graduate learning communities, and there's not a cookie cutter student audience. In terms of the outcomes, they are also very diverse. So we have about 31% of our students, and forgive me, this is not the MS in Climate program because we haven't had graduates graduate from the MS in Climate program, but this is from our MA Climate Society program, which is also very interdisciplinary. About 31% went into the private sector, 21% public sector, 27% nonprofit NGOs. Some students continue on in academia and research, so it's very diverse. And the web page that we just highlighted gives you additional information regarding the organizations that have hired our students, the job titles that our students received. And then again, this is just to give you a little bit more insights in specific organizations, as I mentioned, but definitely check out the website. You'll see a more robust list. It's extremely diverse. Boston Consulting Group is very different from the Mayor's Office of Climate Resiliency, is very different from the Nature Conservancy, is very different from the World Bank. The through line for all of these students is that they have this really robust climate core education. I now want to touch on financial aid specifically and fellowships and scholarships available. So at Columbia Climate School, we are very proud of the fact that we offer merit scholarships automatically to our applicant pool. In terms of when applying to the MS in Climate program, the only stipulation of being reviewed for it is we ask that you apply by the January 15th priority deadline. That is strongly encouraged, and that you indicate yes on a yes and no question of are you interested in receiving merit scholarships. In fact, it's a required question. So as long as you say yes, then you will absolutely be reviewed for it. This past year, we approximately 60% of our enrolling class received a merit scholarship. We were very proud of that fact. I also want to note that we have Yellow Ribbon. We are a proud member of the Yellow Ribbon program that is for United States military veterans who have 100% of the post 9/11 GI Bill. Our tuition and financial aid webpage does list external fellowship directories. We strongly encourage you to review those directories. Now would be the time for you to pursue external fellowships if you were interested in them. And then finally, we also offer what's called a Dean's Graduate Scholarship. Those are highly competitive for MS Climate students. And then, of course, many of our students utilize federal and private loans. Our program or our school partners with the Student Financial Planning Office for financial aid. And in fact, I believe Sarah can correct me, but I think GSAPP also partners with the Student Financial Planning Office for more intimate financial aid counseling when it comes to loans and private loans. All right, and now I'm turning it back over to Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Alfred. Yes, that is correct. We do partner with the Student Financial Planning Office for more intimate guidance on the FAFSA, federal aid, and student loans if you're eligible for federal aid. And another thing that Alfred mentioned is the scholarship process for the climate school, and we do something similar at GSAPP. And really, there is no additional application, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the application requirements now. But purely by submitting your application to GSAPP, you will be automatically reviewed for merit-based scholarship. So there is no other application that is required for that. You also simply have to include in your application that you are interested in being considered for aid directly on the application. And if you are awarded scholarship, then it will be included on your decision letter, which we hope to communicate by March 15th and hopefully earlier. And additionally, I wanted to mention that we have our own dedicated career services for students at GSAPP. So if you're doing the dual program, you have two great resources at the Climate School and GSAPP. So that is a great plus for the program, for the dual program. So now I just want to talk a little bit about the application process, and it's pretty straightforward. If you haven't started your application yet, there are different prompts in each section. So if you don't catch what I'm telling you now, there will be links in each section of the application to provide more information. Firstly, the application deadline for the architecture and urban design program is January 15th at by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please do keep that in mind. That deadline is not to submit your application only, but to make sure that all of your required materials are submitted by that date as well. And I'll go over the three letters of recommendation in a moment, but it's not the time to submit your application and then wait for your recommendations and test scores to come in. All of your required materials should be received by that deadline. We have a very short window to review applications, so this is the deadline for your whole application and all of the required materials. So the first thing when you go into the application is you'll see that the personal statement is a requirement, and for MSAUD, we require a 500-page personal not 500-page, 500-word personal statement. It should be very succinct. It's fine if you go a little bit over. We just want to know what resonates about GSAPP and how it could really contribute to your career goals. And if there's something that you want to add there and you can't fit it in the 500 word limit, there is the supplemental material section that you can actually include more information. So please try to be succinct with your personal statement. Our faculty are reviewing many applications, and there are other places where you can include additional information that you can't fit in your personal statement. For example, the resume section, if you want to highlight some of your work experience, that is the place to put it. Internship, work projects. We don't have a preference between the resume and CV format, whatever you're used to, whatever is comfortable for you. Some people are very used to submitting the resume, and some people are used to submitting the CV format. So there isn't a preference for us. And next, transcripts is a major part of the application requirements. And if you have attended multiple schools, we request that you upload copies of the official transcripts of each school to make sure that the letter grades appear in the transcript section. If you've done a certificate program where you didn't receive credit, this is not the place to include that. Um, and you might want to include that in your CV, but the transcript section is for undergraduate and graduate coursework where you've received credit. And if your transcript is not in English, we require the copy of the official transcript and the official certified translation to accompany it in that upload. And keep in mind, all of these transcripts at this time are considered unofficial. And at the time of admission and enrollment, you will be required to submit the official transcripts at that time, meaning that they will need to come directly from the universities at that time. And if you have studied at an international university, a international credit evaluation will be required at that time. If you've done any high school work, please do not include that. Of course, you've done high school work, but please don't include that in this section. Only undergraduate and graduate studies in this section. And three letters of recommendation are required. We are looking for students, so we hope that you can submit three letters of recommendation from faculty members. And we understand that students are coming from different stages of their life, and maybe they haven't been in contact with faculty for a while. In that case, if faculty recommendations are not available to you, then you can use a professional recommendation. And please note that this is not a place where you need to ask a recommender with a high title. It's really important, the content of the recommendation, and you should ask someone who really understands your work and has a good relationship in that way where they know who you are. Submitting a recommendation with somebody you barely know isn't going to strengthen your application in this case. And if you haven't started your application yet, I would recommend that you include your three letters of include the names of your recommenders in the application now. What happens is they get a automatic email with a link to upload their recommendation. Coming up is a very busy time for everyone, so it's really important to give them that time to craft a really strong letter of recommendation for you. Don't wait until December to include the names of your recommenders on the application. I would encourage you to think about that now and give them that time to write a recommendation for you. And portfolio is a requirement for the architecture and urban design program. We are open to many different medias, depending on your background. A maximum of 20-page PDF is the requirement here. Please don't go over 20 pages, and the formatting should be optimized for viewing. So our faculty are reviewing in laptops and regular sized computers. So if there's too much information on there, I would rethink the viewing, the image, and also get some feedback from your peers, your faculty before you upload these images. And lastly, the English proficiency test is a requirement if English is not your primary language, and we accept the TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. And this actually must come from the testing center. We do have an exemption directly on the application if you have studied at an undergraduate institution or graduate institution for more than at least 2 years, and the language of instruction was English and it was an academic program, then you can self-select directly on the application your exemption, and you don't need to request this requirement, and you would be exempt from it, and it will complete your application if you are eligible for this exemption. And in the next slide, um, if you have any questions throughout the process, we also hold admissions information sessions with, uh, we'll go over all of the application requirements, and we probably have like 5 more sessions until the end of the year, up until the deadline. So feel free to join us for that as well. Here is my contact if you have any questions throughout your application process. And I've added Thad and Noah's contact here if you have any questions about the curriculum after this presentation. And I'm going to hand it off to Alfred.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So yeah, just to wrap things up now, we'll touch on our application process at the climate school and something that we need to emphasize. What's very interesting about this dual degree, it does require two separate applications. So you will need to apply to both the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, as Sarah has thoughtfully outlined their requirements through their application portal, and you will also need to apply through Columbia Climate School's application portal for the MS in Climate program. So when applying to the dual degree, we do not have one application. It does require two distinct applications. Both applications do have a section where when you select MS in Climate, and then you would indicate, are you applying to a dual degree? And you would indicate that in both applications as well. So just highlighting that both applications are required. In terms of our application process, it's very similar, interestingly, to what Sarah highlighted. We do require a resume. We also require two letters of reference. If one of the letters of reference, forgive me, if you've been enrolled in a university within the last 5 years, the climate school does forgive me, an undergraduate university, the climate school does ask that you submit at least one academic recommendation letter. What's interesting here, some students have asked us, could I use the same references for my GSAPP application as well as my climate school? Yes, you could. They still have to go through each one of the portals. And the other element I just want to note is that you're reviewed by different admissions committees. So GSAPP has their own admissions committee reviewing you for the MS in Architecture and Urban Design, and Columbia Climate School has our own admissions committee reviewing you for the MS in Climate program. You would also upload your unofficial transcripts. Our protocols for English language are identical to Sarah's as it relates to the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the Duolingo English test. And then finally, you would submit a statement of purpose. We actually have two deadlines, and I recommend everybody that is interested in the dual degree, though, take advantage of the January 15th deadline. And that is when we would release decisions in March, and again, recommended for scholarships. And our final deadline is March 1st, 2026. Sometimes I get candidates who ask if this is an interesting opportunity, if I start the MS in Climate program, let's say, the 2-year MS in Climate program, what if in my first semester I decide that I'm interested in the built environment and now all of a sudden the MS in Architecture Urban Design becomes of great interest to me? You could apply to the MS in Architecture and Urban Design in your first semester in the MS in Climate program. But again, you would have to go through their competitive admissions process. So I just want to highlight that as well. Um, in terms of the statement of purpose, it's ours is up to 1,000 words. Interestingly, you share your key experiences. What are your academic and professional goals? Which climate core courses are you most interested in? We kind of talked about the climate core. And then I indicate which advanced certificate. In the case of if you are applying to the dual degree, instead of highlighting the advanced certificate, you could highlight one. But I didn't discuss the advanced certificates today for a reason. The reason I didn't discuss them is they're not included in the MS dual degree with architecture, planning, and preservation. Instead, you're actually pursuing an entirely separate degree in your second year, or alternatively, your first year, in the form of the MS in architecture and urban design. So in this case, in your statement of purpose, we recommend highlighting the dual degree you wish to pursue, in addition to the core courses of most interest to you. And that concludes our session, but I would love to welcome, we still have time. We'd love to answer any questions. Feel free to reach out to us at admissions@climate.columbia.edu. Myself or Damaris Diaz, who's helping with the Q&A, are happy to correspond with you. And I also have one-on-one appointments if you wish to have a more intimate conversation or a one-on-one conversation. We also have current student appointments, and actually, if I could ask Damaris to share the current student appointment calendar, if you want to speak to a current student in the MS in Climate program or just a student in the climate school in general to get a sense of the learning community and the vibes, so to speak, of our faculty, feel free to schedule that appointment.